So I cannot be more pleased to introduce our speaker today. Not only is Beth Wood a fellow certified public accountant, she is an amazing person. She is in her 4th term with North Carolina as being North Carolina's elected state auditor. She is a longtime public servant with nearly 30 years of auditing experience. She's worked in the auditor's office for nearly 10 years. And before that, she was in the state treasurer's office and also worked in the private sector. Beth is the first female elected as a state auditor in North Carolina. And I was not the first female member of this Rotary Club, but of the first 4 that joined this club, I'm the only one that's still a member, other than Vicki Holder, I believe. So those first females, I'm very proud of them. Through her work as state auditor, Beth has worked to strengthen and improve state government by focusing in the areas of Medicaid, transportation, CARES Act spending, and information technology. Her administration has identified hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars in wasteful spending. These audits have resulted in legislation to improve the oversight and efficiency of state government, and also earned her the title of taxpayers watchdog. And if you guys know how dogs are, you may not hear a lot from them until something startles them, and they bark loud. So please welcome Beth Wood.
Good afternoon. I have to tell you what a great honor it is, or I should say an experience, to be here with all of you who are so camaraderie-like, working together for great things in your community. I come from Raleigh. They're all divisive. Everybody wants what they want. It is such an awesome afternoon to be here with you and just see all of you working together for the greater good of your community. I grew up pretty poor, and I appreciate all the opportunities you're offering to others as they come along. I'm a very blessed woman. Obviously, all of you are very blessed, and I just appreciate you taking those blessings and passing them on to others less fortunate. So I appreciate all the work that you do. And I know it takes time, effort, that you could be doing something else. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for what you're giving back to your community. So I am Beth Wood, your North Carolina State Auditor. I'm here today to talk to you about the State Auditor's Office. And I want to tell you who we are, what we do, who we do it to, and talk about how the State Auditor's Office really affects each and every one of you. So I'm going to start out with this number, 46 billion. 46 billion. That number represents the dollars that are spent in Raleigh every year. And while the streams of all that money coming into Raleigh so that we can spend it to run your state government is varied, I will tell you the source remains the same, and that's you and I. So we're bringing into Raleigh $13 billion a year in state income taxes that we all pay. We're bringing in another $8 billion from sales tax, and you don't have to be 18 years old to pay sales tax, but we're bringing $8 billion in a year in sales tax for running our state government. Another $2 billion in gas taxes, $1 billion in corporate income taxes, and then within that number is another $21 billion that is simply federal taxes that you and I pay. They go to Washington, D.C., and they get allocated back to North Carolina in the form of grants, Medicaid, food stamps, money for clean water and air, money to build our roads and bridges, money for student financial aid for students to go to our colleges and our universities. So the State Auditor's Office, we are the only, listen closely, we are the only eyes and ears that you have in Raleigh to look over how your tax dollars are being spent, how they're being reported, and how they're being recorded. The State Auditor's Office is it. So who do we do this to? We audit state government. That would be Department of Transportation, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Public Instruction. We audit the 16 universities across our state, plus the North Carolina School of Math and Science. We audit the 58 community colleges, 29 one year, 29 the next, and we audit 100 clerks of court. We audit 25 a year, so they're on an every 4-year rotation. Now, there are misconceptions about an audit. So when anybody hears that the state auditor's office has been in and done an audit, they think we have caught every dollar that's out of place. We have caught every mistake that's been made. We have caught every employee who's cheated on their timesheet, and that is simply not true. The state auditor's office is one of the few in North Carolina, is one of the few in the nation that performs many, many different types of audits. And with those audits come objectives. And there's many misconceptions about what gets caught and what these audits mean. For instance, we audit the financial statements for the state of North Carolina, for the universities and the community colleges. And all that is somebody hands us a set of numbers, financial statements. It tells us what we or that organization owns, OWN. It tells what they owe, OWE, and the net of those two numbers is their financial health, their bottom line. And all we do is confirm those numbers. That's it. There could be fraud going on in that organization. I'm not in there looking for it. That's not the objective of a financial statement audit. There could be a ton of wasteful spending going on. I'm not there to look for that either. I'm just here. If somebody says got $5 million worth of cash in the bank, I'm going to confirm you really got $5 million. Who uses these financial statements? Creditors. Creditors want to know that if they're going to loan you money, that these numbers can be relied on. So when I audit the financial statements for the state of North Carolina, our bond rating agency wants to know when they look at our bottom line, we are financially healthy or not. And I would tell you that the state of North Carolina is only one of 14 in the nation with a triple A bond rating, which means we have the best credit rating in the nation and we get the lowest interest rates when we go out and borrow money. And Lord, do we borrow billions. So we're paying the lowest interest rates. But again, that's all a financial statement audit is. I have confirmed the numbers. Did I confirm that all the cash made it to the bank that was supposed to make it? No, I didn't confirm that. What I confirmed is you put on this piece of paper, there's $5 million in the bank. Oh yeah, there's $5 million in the bank. End of conversation. The next type of audit that we do are, I said we get $21 billion worth of grants. Well, the federal government wants to know, you sent this money in for a particular purpose. Did we use that money for those particular purposes? So they send money in, they send in about $10 billion a year in Medicaid, health insurance for the indigent. Did we only give that money, pay for the services of those who are eligible? They send billions in here to pave our roads and build our bridges. Our roads must be paved to federal specs. So did DOT go out and make sure that they built the roads to federal specs? And I audit to make sure that DOT confirms that. So now this is more of a compliance audit and not all about the numbers. The audit that we do that is so near and dear to my heart is what I'm going to talk about today are performance audits. This is where we find the wasteful spending. And let me tell you, your dollars are so much more susceptible to waste than they ever were to corruption. And understand this, corruption's illegal, waste is not. So we went in and looked at Department of Transportation. It was said that for 2019, the Department of Transportation wasted overspent their budget by $742 million. They're the third largest agency. They have a $6 billion budget, and they overspent their budget by $742 million. And worse than that, they ran out of cash. State of North Carolina, DOT, couldn't pay their bills. They ran out of cash. How does that happen? Well, the General Assembly wanted to know that. Well, DOT went out and spent another $1 million on a study to go tell a story. So the state auditor's office went in and decided we were going to find out, how do you overspend your budget by $742 million? And how do you run out of cash? At the end of 2019, the state of North Carolina owed two vendors $144 million because we could not pay them. These are pavers, architects, engineers, and many of those companies laid people off because they couldn't pay the payroll. So we go in and this is what we found. Now, only did we confirm that they overspent their budget by $742 million. We figured out how they did it, why they did it, and who was responsible. So there were three kind of big categories so one of them was they overspent their budget on preliminary engineering fees by $244 million. And I said, how did you come up with that number? They said, we used last year's number. And I said, now, wait a minute, I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, but isn't preliminary engineering fees charged more on a project by project basis? So you know we're going to have preliminary engineering fees and which projects got to have it. You know which projects you're going to build because you got contracts for it. Why didn't you just add up all the ones that you knew and then make that your budget? Well, we could have, but it was just easier to take last year's number. So overspent it by $244 million. Really, people? Really? It was the state of North Carolina. So then they overspent their operational category, which is maintenance, filling in potholes, mowing the grass up and down the shoulders. They overspent that by $330 million. And I said, okay, I don't want to know how you came up with that number. We took the last 10-year average. Are you kidding me? Do you not know where you're going to go mow? Do you not know where you plan to fill in the potholes? Do you not know where you're going to go repave? Are you kidding me, people? And then they overspent their disaster recovery monies by $246 million. I just had to ask, where did you get that budget number? And they said, well, we, for the last decade, have been allocating $50 million to disaster recovery. Honey, do you not know where you live? This is North Carolina. We have hurricanes. Do you not know where you live? We have not spent less than $50 million since 2013 on disaster recovery. In 2017, we spent $200 million. In 2018, we spent $176 million. And in 2019, we spent $296 million. And you only allocated $50 million. So then, now we're getting down to the, how in the world could this happen? So we have 14 regional offices across North Carolina, DOT regional offices. And each one of them are paving the roads and repairing bridges if it's applicable in your division. And they are cleaning up the potholes and mowing grass, whatever. But it's 14 different divisions, offices. So DOT in Raleigh gives them their budget and says, see you at the end of the year. There is no watching money coming in, money going out, your budget. And when the departments, the divisional offices would sort of get like into February or March and they started running a little bit low, they borrow against or spend against next year's budget. Now for me, if I'm going to go against next year's budget at the end of this year, I'm going to sort of, you know, settle that thing up, and my next year budget is going to have to be smaller, right? Wrong. They got into next year's budget and they ran low against, so borrow against the next year's budget. And this has been going on and going on. That's why we ran out of the cash. That's why we ran out of the cash. There are reports at Central Office Raleigh DOT that showed the budget versus the actual, the cash in, the cash out, and nobody was looking at it. Nobody was checking it. Nobody was holding the 14 divisional offices accountable. So I go down and I tell the General Assembly what I find, and immediately they put a law into place that said these things will happen from here on out. They took DOT Transportation Board, they took them to the cleaners in a reprimand. And they've also, I will just say that there were some resignations at DOT. The secretary is no longer there. The chief financial officer is no longer there. The chief operating officer is no longer there. And the chief engineer in Raleigh are no longer there. Now, everybody's allowed to resign, but the timing was just interesting to me. So this is an example of how this is supposed to work. I go find this stuff out, and then somebody's supposed to go fix it. Now, I promise, I guarantee the General Assembly, the governor, and every agency here that works in Raleigh, irrefutable findings. When I put my information in a report, can't nobody argue with me. And for 12.5 years now, nobody's been able to argue with me and win. Because we dive into and punch holes into, and we hand you, before we ever walk out the door, we hand you your findings and say, this is what we found, prove us wrong. And if they can't prove us wrong, we make them write on a piece of paper how you plan to fix it, when you're going to have it fixed, and who's responsible for it. If you can prove me wrong, the finding goes away. But if you can't prove me wrong with evidence, then the finding stays. And so before we ever put it out publicly, this conversation happens. So when my reports hit the public, they are irrefutable. They absolutely are irrefutable. And very quickly, I am running out of time. Very quickly, I want to talk about a Medicaid audit. So Medicaid is the biggest program in the state of North Carolina, the biggest spender. We have a $46 billion budget. 14 billion of it is Medicaid. So we wanted to look at the providers. So you can't be a doctor or a dentist or an in-home healthcare provider. You cannot participate in Medicaid as a provider unless you've been approved by Department of Health and Services in North Carolina. So there's this application process that you go through, and then once you get approved every 5 years, you're supposed to be re-verified, re-approved, and that includes background checks, licensure checks. Do you still have your license? If you're a nursing home, do you still have a certification? So they're supposed to check this out every 5 years. In this audit that we did on the Medicaid providers, there's 90,000 providers in North Carolina that provide services to 1.5 million Medicaid recipients. We have 10 million citizens in North Carolina, 1.5 million are receiving Medicaid, 90,000 providers serving them. And what we found is that when we started looking through the licensures, there's about 60 doctors or dentists or whomever that were in trouble with their licensing board. There were 18 of them who had either had lost their license or had it suspended. And yet they were still serving Medicaid patients. We paid one of them $2 million in the course of a year. We paid another one $1.2 million in the course of the year. They lost their licenses or they had it suspended, and they're still serving our Medicaid patients. We found 16 of them that DHHS had let slip through the cracks. We found another 36 that had limitations on their licenses. They're not supposed to be, they were caught for sexual misconduct, so they're not allowed to treat women. Guess what? Still treating women. So we put all that information into an audit report that your process of checking out all these doctors, dentists, in-home healthcare providers is messed up. These people are still serving people that they shouldn't be. So not only is DHHS cleaning that up, but it has spurned or spun off another audit of the North Carolina Medical Board. If you took their licenses or you suspended their licenses, how in the heck are they still practicing? Where were you? They're still practicing. And we did some statistical analysis, probably about 1,000 doctors, dentists, in-home healthcare providers estimated in North Carolina with no license or a suspended license. I would tell you quickly, we have an investigative division. We're concentrating on small cities. There are a lot of small cities that are the financial group, Stealing and Blind. You're going to see some interesting investigative reports coming out here over the next 60 to 90 days, where we're finding, again, that small cities not being run well, and they are about to go bankrupt because their financial staff are stealing the blind. And also I have IT department. We are doing information technology, general controls audits at our universities. There's a lot of concern that student data is not being protected, and it's true. So we are working with the Board of Governors, showing them where they need to be beefing up and what they need to be doing in our university system to protect student data. So very quickly, or not so quickly, that's the State Auditor's Office. That's who we are, what we do, and who we do it to. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to stay around and take them. Thank you.
So Beth, thank you very much. And I guess you guys did not know a CPA can be that entertaining. My hero. So